Shirin has given us a good address, good in content, but I even more appreciate the way you deliver your material. It shows that you're involved with what you're saying, you're clear about what you're saying, and more importantly, you are convinced about what you are saying. So, I have never lost a sense of wonder about the endowment, the talents of this generation. Compared to mine, you're light years ahead. Now, I couldn't make a presentation like this, even if I had tried for 5 years in those days. You're living in an entirely different world, and I'm very proud of each one of you. In fact, it's not only Shiji, those who have come up and made presentations have done exceedingly well, and it augurs well for the college and for the country. And I again emphasize the importance of fine-tuning your communication skills, because they play a very important role in your personality development and the kind of impact you will have on people around you in every context and every situation that you would find yourself in throughout your life. Now, there is an episode that is attributed to Addison, the great essayist of the 18th century. Addison was a great author, very clear and extremely delightful to read, but he was a very poor speaker. In fact, very few people combine both skills, reading and speaking. Good authors need not be good speakers and vice versa. So Addison was someone who could write well, but not speak very well. So one day he had to make a public address, and the address was being presided over by somebody with a sense of humor. And as he got up to speak, stage fright got the better of him, and Addison, Joseph Addison, started trembling. And even though he had come thoroughly prepared, his mind went blank and he couldn't speak a word. So if you know the 18th century style, you would know that the style was rather pedantic. So the speech that Addison had committed to memory began with these words: "Ladies and gentlemen, I conceive." Conceive means understand. We actually do not know what he wanted to go on to say, but he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I conceive." And then nervousness, got the better of him. He did not know what to say, so he began again by saying, "Ladies and gentlemen, I conceive." And again the same thing happened. He couldn't utter a word beyond. And he wanted to recollect what the text was like, and again he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I conceive." And then he stopped. And the person who was presiding over the lecture got up and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, the distinguished speaker of the day has conceived 3 times, but he cannot deliver." Right? No, you can deliver, and I'm proud of you. It's a wonderful thing. There is nothing more I enjoy than a good speech. I can sit and listen to a good speech for 10 hours and not feel bored. It's a great art. It's an art that I dream of. So I really want to thank every one of you for your participation in this and your eagerness, willingness to make use of the opportunities available to the assembly to improve your skill. All right, now let's pick up the threads of our thought. As the heart pants after the brook, so does my soul long for you, O God. Yesterday I was trying to think with you on this question of soul, whether or not you believe in the reality of soul. Now, I wanted through that to come to a very, very practical question. The question is this: how do you respond to the world around? We're going to address this question, a very important question. At this point of time, you may not really know the full gravity of this question. I want you to participate in this very free-flowing thinking process with deep involvement. Let's think together. What is the quality of our response to the world around? You may be in the best of places, in the most stimulating environment. You may be implanted in the most vibrant tradition, and yet it may mean nothing to you. You may look bored, indifferent, and end of it all you would say, well, what the heck, I wasted my 3 years. To me it's rather funny that this great excitement, eagerness to get into the best college of the country is not matched by the concern whether or not we are able to respond to it properly. And this mismatch underlines an important feature of modern life, which is intellectual passivity. People expect to be entertained, enlightened, and transported without asking the question whether or not I'm capable of ascending to any level at all. You may go and sit at a lecture, go away and say, oh well, he said nothing. Well, were you ready for anything? Why did you go there at all? You are members of societies and clubs. What do you see there? What are the opportunities that you see there? See, many people say, or not many, a few people say that the assembly is a waste of time. It is not a reflection on what the assembly is. It is a public confession of who they are. Somebody may show to you the most magnificent, enchanting piece of painting, and if you have no taste for it, if you have no sense of beauty, you would say, well, don't waste my time, take it away. A person may conduct himself in the noblest of ways. You would say, he's an old-fashioned bore. It is not a reflection on him. It's a reflection on you. There are people who revel in saying, well, Gandhi, so what? What has he done for the country? The same thing about Bhimrao Ambedkar. Who are these people? It's not a reflection on them. It's a reflection on the people who respond to them in that fashion. You know, if you are in the right frame of mind, one sentence may change your life. If you are as hard as a piece of flint, not even the most sublime speech will have the slightest impact on you. Jesus of Nazareth said, "Do not cast your pearls before swine, lest they trample them underfoot and turn round and rend you." What does that mean? It means that before you offer your intellectual, spiritual insights to people, make sure that they're in a position to appreciate and accept it. Do not be naive and think that because what you're saying is profound, people are going to be happy or people are willing to accept. In fact, they will attack you. They will despise you for the pearls of wisdom you would share with them. It means that there is a problem. Now, I want us to now think about that problem so that we can come out of it. This is a widespread problem, one of the great pandemics, global epidemics of our time. And I often refer to it as shallowness. We have created a very shallow culture. And all exclusively physical cultures or materialistic cultures will by definition be shallow cultures. Because matter is only surface. Matter has no depth. So in living as we do in this kind of a culture, we have to constantly be on our guard against what is being done to us, against what we are doing to ourselves, against what is happening to us and the kind of people that we are becoming. Ask yourself, what is the quality of my response? Now, one of the things that you see fairly widespread among young people is indifference. And the image that I once portrayed before you of that of a young person walking the corridor, both his ears plugged with earphones, listening to his cell phone, and walking as though the world around doesn't exist. Or for that matter, the reports that you've often read in newspapers of a victim of a street accident lying wounded and bleeding on the roadside, unattended by anyone. No one would stop and offer a hand of help. Indifference. And you read daily of events of cruelty and violence, whether it is communal atrocity, whether it is rape, particularly the rape of young girls, babies. Such is the level of degradation that our species has suffered. Ask yourself, how can a man respond to a little girl in that manner? What's the quality of his response? Why does he respond in that manner? Ask. Ask yourself, if your father or mother is sick and confined to bed at home, how will you respond to that event? I know many young people who feel completely bewildered because they do not know how to stretch a hand of help and love to their own parents. How did this come about? Why has this happened to us? There must be a logic to it. And today we are trying to understand that logic. And it's not very difficult to understand. My thesis is very simple. As long as you think you're only a body, as long as your obsessions or interests are confined only to a body, and you do not develop the sensitivities of the heart and the soul, the quality of your responses to people, situations, events around you will be abysmally poor. The best way to understand a person is in terms of the quality of his or her responses. You can go around making all kinds of pretenses. You can wear your masks and go around as a very amiable person or a kind-hearted person or humane individual. All that makes no real difference. Let there be a situation where you have to respond to a human need, and then you will know who you are. Then you will know which part of your personality you have developed. Then you know whether your heart is made of stone or of flesh. This morning, my friends, I want to emphasize the importance of heeding the kind of responses that you are capable of. The greatest tragedy of this country is that it has produced an educated class, the elite of this country, which is incapable of responding to the needs of this country. And they use all opportunities only to fatten themselves. If only we had a ruling elite that loved the people of India, we would have been the greatest nation in the world. Education has bypassed this most central shaping question. Through education, what is the kind of empowerment you are imparting to young people? Now, what is the meaning of empowerment? Unfortunately, and most pathetically, empowerment is understood as the opportunity to share the spoils of power. That's not the idea of empowerment. Empowerment in the human context means enabling a person to live his or her life in the best manner. And that certainly includes equipping and enabling a person to respond to all that is around oneself in the fullness of his being, which is not merely the body, it is also the intellect, it's also the spirit. That's why I'm taking up the subject. Why is it that compassion, for example, is evaporating from our midst? Arnold Toynbee, who studied the rise and fall of 23 civilizations, came to the conclusion that among the factors that play a role in the undermining and the gradual death of civilizations is the demise of compassion. When cruelty takes the place of compassion, the beginning of the fall is very clear. And these signs are very evident in our times, and therefore we cannot afford to be ignorant about them. Now, let's come back to the question of responding. Suppose I read a poem to you. The students of literature who may be familiar with that author and therefore his particular ethos, style, thematic structures, etc., will respond in a certain manner. The students of economics, the students of history, of mathematics, so on and so forth, will respond in a very different sense. Some would say, oh, very ordinary set of words, why bother? Therefore, my friends, I want you to know that the richness of your life depends on the quality of your responses. Now come back to the passage. If you listen to these words, and I'm again going to quote to you, you will see that the speaker is trying his level best to express the quality of his emotions, the quality of his connect with something out there. What does he say? As the heart pants after the brook. As the heart pants after the brook, so does my soul long for you. That's called quality. This is what I meant by quality of response. Why is it that we are not able to respond in this manner? Why are we not able to feel the intensity of this state? Is it because there is no God? Well, what we do is, we turn our incapacities into proofs. If you're not able to do something, we say it doesn't exist. This is what is called burying one's head in the sand. My world is only, or my world comprises only those things which I can comprehend and manage. How small or how large is your world? And nothing that I cannot comprehend, nothing that I cannot manipulate, control and master has any place in my world. As a result, what happens? We live in a world that is progressively shrinking. And as our world shrinks, we also shrink. That's why the globe is today peopled with very small creatures. If you examine the literature of the 20th century, you will see written, pulsating right through the entire body of world literature of the 20th century, one particular theme, which is common to all of it, which is the lament over the dwindling of human stature. Please remember this. The lament over the dwindling human stature. People are becoming smaller and smaller and smaller. And historically, the reason is very clear. As we rejected these larger dimensions of human consciousness, these wonderful dimensions of human experience, and allowed our world to shrink, we ourselves shrank and became smaller and smaller and smaller. And we are today human bonsais. You know what bonsai is? Dwarfed plants. Okay? We'll never grow to our stature, and that's a tragedy. For me, death is not the tragedy. The real tragedy for me is the stature of human beings being reduced so we become dwarfs or bonsais. Now, much depends, my friends, on the quality of your responses. Now, for example, when you test it today, when you go to a classroom, you listen to a lecture. What is the degree of your happiness? Do you sit through a lecture like a kind of painful obligation coerced upon you? Or do you feel happy? Do you feel activated intellectually? Do you feel challenged? Or do you sit there passively? Are you able to go into the deeper dimensions of whatever is being presented in the class? Believe you me, a good student can go beyond what a teacher says in the class for the simple practical reason that every teacher aims at the middle of the class intellectually. Because a teacher has to carry the entire class with him or her. So if he or she addresses only the creamy layer, the others will be left behind. At the same time, if he or she addresses only the bottom layer, the others will be excluded intellectually. It's a waste of time for them. Therefore, as a compromise, teachers usually aim at the golden middle. And there will be many things that a lecturer, a professor may leave unstated or hinted or intuited. A good student will read between the lines and get a lot from the gaps. And that's when your experience in the classroom becomes vibrant. And ask yourself, do you experience that kind of live wire excitement in a classroom? And that's why you have things like this. As a hart pants after the brook. Can you say, for example, as a hart pants after the brook, so does my soul long for an economics honors lecture? Can you? Or an English honors lecture? Or a mathematics class? How many of you feel that way? As a hart pants after the brook, so does my soul long for the assembly. Anyone? Really? That's very good. That's 2-3 people whose heart is still alive. Okay? That's very good. So, if you don't feel that excitement, ask yourself, why is it that I don't feel that excitement? I can only say this to you. My heart is ablaze with excitement as I come to you. My being overflows with happiness, ecstasy when I stand before you. And I can't think of a better experience than this. And what accounts for the difference between the intensity of the two responses? Well, one way of explaining is that this old man has nothing to do. So he comes and kills our time. The other is very possibly, I don't know, possibly we are not up to it. So we'll try and measure up. Measure up. You know, Adlai Stevenson once addressed a group of students in Harvard University in a post in a talk. And after the talk, one of them went up to him and said, Mr. Stevenson, you speak very well, but much of what you said went over our heads. Right? It happens? Much of what you said went over our heads. Guess what the reply was from Stevenson? Huh? Yeah, you should have raised your head a little higher. So please examine yourself. But I believe that what I've discussed with you today is of crucial importance in your welfare as students of the college. On this will hinge the extent of your formation and your achievement all round. Let's rise for prayer.